Mark stood at the kitchen window, staring out at the empty driveway. His wife, Rachel, had left for work almost an hour ago, and he was starting to worry. It wasn't like her to be this late, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Just as he was about to grab his keys and go looking for her, he saw a flash of movement in the corner of his eye. He turned just in time to see Rachel backing out of the garage, her car loaded down with boxes and bags. But as she pulled out onto the street, Mark saw something that made his blood run cold. In the trunk of the car, he saw a small figure huddled in the corner. It was a child, no more than 6 or 7 years old, their face hidden behind a curtain of tangled hair. Mark's heart raced as he watched his wife drive away. The child's terrified face burned into his memory. He knew he had to follow her and find out what was going on. And as he set off down the street, he had a feeling that the truth was going to be more shocking than he could ever have imagined. Mark followed Rachel's car down the winding roads, trying to stay far enough behind so as not to draw attention to himself. He had no idea where she was going or what she was planning to do with the child in the trunk. All he knew was that he had to find out. As he drove, his mind raced with questions. Why had Rachel put the child in the trunk? Was she in some kind of trouble? And if so, what could he do to help her? Mark had always trusted Rachel, and he couldn't believe that she would do something like this. But he knew he couldn't jump to conclusions. He had to find out the truth, no matter how hard it might be. After what felt like an eternity, Rachel's car finally turned off the main road and onto a dirt track that led into the woods. Mark's heart pounded as he followed her, the trees closing in around him like a cage. He had no idea where this road was leading, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. As he drove deeper into the woods, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he was getting closer to the truth. And as he approached a clearing up ahead, he knew he was about to discover a shocking secret. Mark's heart pounded in his chest as he watched Rachel's car pull to a stop in the clearing. He had no idea what he was going to find when he got there, but he knew he had to be prepared for anything. As he approached the car, he saw the child in the trunk struggling to get out. Mark's heart ached at the sight, and he knew he had to act fast. He pulled his car up alongside Rachel's and jumped out, running to the trunk to help the child escape. As he lifted the trunk lid, he was shocked to see a young girl, no more than 6 years old, staring back at him with tears in her eyes. She was covered in dirt and bruises, and she looked terrified. "It's okay, honey," Mark said, trying to sound as soothing as possible. "I'm here to help you." The girl looked at him with wide, trusting eyes, and Mark's heart broke at the sight. He knew he had to get her out of there, no matter what the cost. But as he lifted the girl out of the trunk, he heard a voice behind him. "What do you think you're doing?" Mark turned to see Rachel standing a few feet away, a look of anger and betrayal on her face. He knew he had a lot of explaining to do. Mark stood frozen, the young girl in his arms, as he faced his wife. He could see the anger and hurt in her eyes, and he knew he had a lot of explaining to do. "Rachel, I can explain," Mark said, hoping his words would somehow make things right. "Explain what, Mark?" Rachel spat out, her voice shaking with emotion. "Explain how you followed me out here. Explain how you saw me put a child in the trunk of my car and did nothing about it." Mark's heart ached at the accusations. He had never wanted to hurt Rachel, and he knew he had to make things right. "I followed you because I was worried," Mark said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I saw the child in the trunk, and I couldn't just turn a blind eye. I had to find out what was going on." Rachel looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "And what did you find out, Mark? Did you find out that your wife is a monster?" Mark's heart broke at the words. He knew he had to do something to make things right, but he had no idea where to start. As he stood there, struggling to find the right words, he heard a soft voice behind him. "It's not her fault," the young girl said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, don't be mad at her." Mark turned to see the girl looking up at him with pleading eyes. He knew he had to listen to her, no matter how hard it might be. Mark's heart ached as he listened to the young girl's words. He knew he had to find a way to make things right, no matter how much it hurt. "Rachel, I'm sorry," Mark said, his voice filled with emotion. "I should have trusted you. I should have known that there was a reason for what you were doing." Rachel looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "I was just trying to help her," she said, her voice shaking. "I saw her on the side of the road, all alone and hungry. I couldn't just leave her there." Mark's heart filled with love and pride as he listened to his wife's words. He knew he had been wrong to doubt her, and he vowed to never let it happen again. "We'll figure this out together," Mark said, taking Rachel's hand in his. "We'll find a way to help this little girl and make things right." Rachel nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "Thank you, Mark," she said, leaning in to hug him. As they stood there, holding each other, Mark knew that he had finally found the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With Rachel by his side, he knew they could overcome anything. Mark and Rachel spent the next few days working to figure out what to do about the young girl in their care. They knew they couldn't just leave her on the side of the road, but they also didn't want to get into any legal trouble for taking her in. After much discussion and research, they decided to contact a local social services agency to see if they could help. They were relieved when the agency was able to place the girl in a foster home with a loving family, and they were grateful to have been able to help. But the experience left a lasting impact on Mark and Rachel. They realized that there were so many children out there in need of help, and they decided to do something about it. They started volunteering at their local children's home, providing love and support to children who had nowhere else to turn. Mark and Rachel knew that they couldn't change the world, but they could make a difference in the lives of the children they helped. And as they watched the children grow and thrive, they knew that they had found their calling. Years later, as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset over the mountains, Mark turned to Rachel and smiled. "I'm so glad I followed your car that day," he said. "It led us to a path we never could have imagined, and I wouldn't have it any other way." Rachel squeezed his hand and smiled back. "Me neither, Mark, me neither." Mark's decision to follow that car and help the young girl in the trunk changed their lives in ways they could never have imagined. It led them down a path of service and compassion, and they knew they had made the right choice. The young girl they helped went on to have a happy and fulfilling life, and Mark and Rachel were grateful to have played a small part in it. They continued to volunteer at the children's home, making a difference in the lives of countless children who needed love and support.